Hey guys, welcome back to Ron's Tech Hub, and in this one we're going to be looking at the Motorola G9 Plus compared to the Motorola G8 Plus. This is going to be a review of the G9 Plus, but comparing it to the older one to see if it's actually worth the upgrade. Let's get started. Okay guys, so now we're going to quickly have a rundown of the specs for both devices. Let's start with the G8 and jump over and compare and contrast. So the G8 has a 6.3-inch IPS display. The G9 has a 6.8-inch IPS display, so slightly larger there. For me, it is noticeable in the hand. The G8 feels okay, the G9 feels a lot longer. I mean, I have large hands, so it's easy for me to get across the screen. The G8 also has a Snapdragon 665 coupled with an Adreno 610, 4GB of RAM and 64GB of internal storage, compared to the G9 Plus's Snapdragon 730G, the same 4GB of RAM and 128GB of internal storage. This is coupled with a 4000 mAh battery for the G8 and for the G9 a full 5000 mAh battery. Now, this is important because the G8 has a 15-watt charger, whereas the G9 Plus has a 30-watt charger. I found in my experience that the G8 takes close to 2 hours to fully charge, I would say, and the G9 takes slightly over an hour, maybe an hour 10, an hour 15 for myself. Yes, this phone does have a 3.5mm jack in 2020, so that's really handy if you want to use wide headsets, if you want to use a shotgun microphone, it works perfectly fine. Alright, so on the G8 Plus we have a 48 megapixel main shooter, 16 megapixel ultrawide and a 5 megapixel depth sensor. So 3 cameras on that one. On the G9 Plus we have a 64 megapixel main shooter, 8 megapixel wide angle, and both the depth and macro sensor are 2 megapixels each. Now, I don't really see the purpose of a 2 megapixel camera anywhere on a phone in 2020, but it's nice to have, so why not have it? Okay, so a sweet spot for these phones, in my opinion, is that they both do 1080p video, so full HD, at 30 frames per second, 60 frames per second, and a whopping 120 frames per second. So if you're editing and you want to slow things down, 60 and 120 is going to be a very nice spot to be. Now, a downside for these cameras is that they both only do 4K, so that's UHD at 30 frames per second. I think it would have been nice to have both of them at 60 frames per second at 4K. The sensors that we have on the phones are fingerprint, accelerometer, gyro, proximity, and compass. However, the compass is only on the G8 Plus. For some reason, they've taken the compass out of the G9 Plus. I guess in my opinion, it's a fair omission because things are still accurate. For example, GPS doesn't randomly rotate. It's still accurate enough without it. But I think, why take a feature out for the upgrade? That doesn't really make sense to me. One of the nice camera upgrades I think came with this is that we went from a 48 megapixel camera for the main shooter to a 64 megapixel camera. Now, I don't know as of yet if these will translate to having good quality, it being more megapixels. So on the next section of this video, I'm going to be testing out both cameras in daylight, outside, indoors during the daytime, outdoors during the nighttime, just to compare. I'm going to be zooming into the pictures as much as I can and showing you guys exactly what they look like close up so you can see the detail for each one. Another noteworthy upgrade is the battery. It went from 4000 milliamps to a full 5000 milliamps, and it charges quicker with a USB-C 30-watt charger. That's just amazing, right? Because now when I charge my phones, I never charge overnight. I simply wake up, turn my alarm off, as one does, plug my USB cable in, go have a shower, get ready, and by the time I'm ready for work, I'm on like 90-something%, and that lasts me the entire day easily. I found that with medium to light to medium use, gets me 2 full days of battery life. However, if I use it heavily throughout the day, I can get probably a day and a half, a day and a quarter worth of battery life, which in my opinion is still really good. Because what that means for me is I'm using SatNav, I'm using either YouTube or Spotify to play my music, I'm taking pictures, I'm recording video, I'm replying to emails, I'm using WhatsApp, I'm using all these features, and the battery easily lasts me a day. Normally I get back home at the end of the day I leave at like 8 a.m. I get back home at like, let's say 5 p.m. and my battery is normally at 50%. Now that's just amazing in my opinion. The 6.8-inch display on the G9 Plus, in my opinion, because it's slimmer and a bit taller, is a bit more comfortable for me to use. If you do have small hands, it is going to be a problem getting from one side of the screen to the next. But if you have large hands like me, then you're going to have no issues whatsoever. Android 10 is also a nice addition here because the Motorola G8 Plus is still in 2020, October of 2020, still stuck on Android 9 when Android 11 just got released. So keep in mind, Motorola is not great with their software updates. In this section, I'm going to be looking at the cameras, and as you guys can see from this one, the one on the left is the G8 Plus, the one on the right is the G9 Plus, and in my opinion here, the G8 Plus looks a bit more accurate and is actually a bit sharper, but I might be wrong. So let's get started on this section. A really weird omission from the G9 Plus is something that was actually present in the G8 Plus, and this is the use of the action cam. Now what the action cam does, it allows you to use one hand and that button to actually rotate the camera in software, so you can hold the camera in portrait mode but still film in landscape mode with full resolution and the maximum frames per second. I've personally found this to be a really handy feature because I could just use one hand to film everything. In this section, I'm testing the night mode on the G8 Plus to the left and the G9 Plus to the right. As you can clearly see, the G8 Plus finished seconds ahead of the G9 Plus, which is a bit strange because with a faster processor, and I was hoping there would be optimization here, it shouldn't be moving that slow for the G9 Plus. So the G8 Plus actually takes this one, night vision mode, to the G8 Plus. Here I'm testing the speed of the cameras. So this is just taking a random photo using the automatic settings. Now the test might have been skewed here slightly because on the right I have the G9 Plus, but I had a memory card in the G9 Plus and the photos were being saved to the memory card. So that might be why it actually was a bit slower there. Also on the G9 Plus, as you can see what I just did there, I zoomed out and used a wide angle camera. Now this is not possible on the G8 Plus. Both these cameras were set to 1080p at 60, but for some reason I think that the G8 Plus is moving a bit smoother. As you can see, when I get to the end of the tilt or the pan, the G9 Plus seems to stutter before it starts moving again, whereas the G8 Plus is just gliding. There's no issues with me moving back and forth. In this section, you guys are going to get to look at some photos taken on the G8 Plus and on the G9 Plus, and you're going to be able to judge by yourselves based on the quality. Okay, so here we have Geekbench installed on both of them. I'm going to open for the very first time. I uninstalled it before. So let's go open, and we're going to do a quick test to see how much faster the G9 Plus is compared to the G8 Plus. Let's accept that. Okay, so let's get the CPU benchmark started. So run CPU benchmark. I'm gonna speed this part up so you guys don't have to sit here and watch the whole thing go along, okay? Another thing I think the G8 Plus does better, but this is not a knock on the G9, This is simply because it's Android 10 and this is running Android 9. The single button navigation at the bottom here, so those two lines that you can see there, the G8 Plus does it a lot better. For example, if I open the Play Store, right, to go home, all I have to do on the G8 Plus is to tap that button and I'm home. On the G9, I've got to swipe that off screen. All right, let's say I open the camera app now. And again, same thing, tap that button, swipe off screen. For me to get to my recent apps, on both of them, it's the same thing. I swipe up and hold for a minute. I swipe up and it pops up my recent apps. And I can obviously go into it and it's the same process. Now on the G8 Plus, to go back one step, I simply swipe left on that button there and it goes back. So in this case, it closes the app. On the G9 Plus, I've got to swipe on the edge of the screen. Not something I'm a fan of, but again, this is not a knock on the G9 Plus. This is simply an Android feature and them trying to copy what Apple has done with iOS. So one nitpicky thing about this camera was the actual signature. On the Motorola G8 Plus and the G9 Plus, they're both exactly the same. I didn't like it because Motorola forces you to use their signature, which is, I mean, it's okay for them, but in some cases, I, for example, might have a PNG I want to use, or someone might give me a PNG that they might want on their photo, along with the date and time and maybe a special text. I know that this can be added afterwards in like Photoshop, but it would just be really nice if this was included in the camera app. So rather than me using Motorola's logo, I can simply browse for a PNG saved on my phone, and that's going to be my signature along again with the date and time. One thing I didn't find as good on the G9 again was the vibration motor. I feel that the vibration motor in the G8 Plus is a lot more sharp, it's a lot more responsive, whereas the G9 Plus's one, it feels a bit slow and sluggish. That might be because the phone's bigger and it just feels different to me, but I think the G8 Plus just feels a lot better with the vibration motor. Another weird omission was the removal of stereo speakers from the G9 Plus. Now the G8 Plus had a speaker up here in the grill and one here, the downward firing speaker. So this had a dual speaker setup. Sound comes from here when playing music and from here. Now on the G9 Plus, there's a single downward firing speaker and that's all you get for sound, nothing else. We're gonna hear how that sounds in a minute, but I think the G8 Plus is gonna win that one, but let's see in a minute. I'm gonna be comparing what these actually sound like. So here we have the Motorola G8 Plus and here we have the Motorola G9 Plus. I'm just gonna hit play, give it about 10-20 seconds and then I'll stop. So this is the G8. This is the G9 Plus. Okay guys, so thanks for sticking with me. Final thoughts on this phone. Should you buy this phone? It's a yes and no. Yes, you should buy it if you do not have a Motorola G8 Plus, because they're so similar, not only in spec but performance in my opinion, that you're better off sticking with this if you already have one. If you have anything below the G8 Plus, so let's say the G7 Plus, the G6 Plus, it's definitely a worthwhile upgrade. Motorola is notorious for not being able to push updates quickly enough, and this is on Android 10. I won't lie to you guys, it's probably not going to get Android 11 for another year or so, even though it just came out. So Motorola needs to ramp up their Android updates. I mean, I think an easy solve for Motorola would just be to just use the Android One program and simply sideload their camera app and their Moto app onto Android One, so that they would never have to worry about updates, right? I actually don't really know why it takes them so long, because they already have stock Android anyway, so it shouldn't take that long. They're probably tweaking a few things just to make sure everything runs fine, but a year and a half is way too long to wait for an Android update when they get released every year. I think at this point, Motorola is simply using, well, Lenovo is using the Motorola name to simply try and sell phones. They release so much of them, it's like they're throwing darts at the wall, something has to stick. Now the G series has been really good. Well, it was really good in the early days. It gave you loads of spec. It was really nice, really quick updates. But now there are other phones that do similar things. Personally, I like stock Android. So for me, it has to be Motorola, Nokia, or Google. However, I like my memory card slots. So Google is out of the picture, right? So Nokia and Motorola are probably the two contenders for my money when it comes to smartphones. Both do really nice stock Android devices at decent prices. That's it, guys. Thank you for watching. This was the Motorola G9 Plus review, and I just compared it to its predecessor, the Motorola G8 Plus. Please do subscribe, please do like and share, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.